We want to welcome you here today on behalf of the committee. Our town only creates a master plan once every 15 or 20 years. So this is really a unique opportunity for each of us to have input into this plan. The plan, our master plan is required by state statute, and it has to cover another number of areas on how people want to see the town grow or evolve by its physical nature. So that would include things like land use, housing, transportation, economic development, infrastructure, natural and cultural resources, open space and recreation, and climate change resiliency. So your input, your being here tonight is so important, because the master plan isn't what the master plan committee wants to be, it's what the residents of our town want it to be. So our goal is to go out and get input from all segments of Walpole, covering all areas, all people. So again, thank you so much for being here, because this is so important to get your input tonight. I first want to acknowledge the members of the committee. And they will wave their hand. Katie Turco-Abate, who is the vice chair, Dean Debus, Ashley Clark, Katie DiNarzo, Andrew Flowers, Janet Fasinolo, John Hauschenbaker, Jennifer Caracas, Margaret Kundark, Glenn Mathey, Michael McGrath, and Donald Murphy are the other members of the committee. And we're very fortunate to have the help of Pat Toussaint, who's the Director of Community and Economic Development in Walpole, and he's been a real help on the logistics of organizing everything, so we really want to thank him. And then lastly, we want to thank Judy Barrett and the Barrett Planning Group. They've been contracted by the town to work on the master plan, and she and her team, they bring an immense amount of expertise and experience in this whole process, bringing specialized tools and methodologies. And they're going to be helping to collect the data, to analyze it, to bring other data into it as they do their analysis, and then helping writing the report. Now the last part in the report is where we, the committee, taking all of that input, we will come up with a list of recommended actions that the town can make. Now we have no authority to enact any of those, but what these recommendations serve and what the master plan serve as a framework to our public officials. So as they make decisions and as they prioritize what they're doing, they're looking at this plan, and we are not only going to have things that are long-term actions, but also some short-term, because it's important to have some immediate goals. So that'll be the end of this whole process, which takes, it could be another 9 months or thereabouts. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming, and we really appreciate your taking the time this evening. And if you have other questions, please contact any one of the members of the Master Plan Committee. We're most willing to answer questions and take more input. So thank you.
So hi, this is just great. Thank you so much for coming here this evening. I do have a bit of a presentation about the master plan, and I'll go through that, because really, I don't think you came here to hear a bunch of slides from me. I think you probably want to talk, and we definitely want to hear from you. But I will kind of start by kind of introducing the process and explaining a bit about what we're going to do this evening. So just first things first, I hope everybody has signed in. There's a sign-in table up there. If you came in through these doors, please walk down that way and make sure that we have your name and your contact information. And we really would like that for a couple of reasons. First, we like to kind of stay in touch with people who come to a meeting and say, there's another meeting coming up. If you're interested in the master plan, we can reach you. And of course, the second, and would be pretty unfortunate reason, would be if we need to do any contact tracing after this meeting. So it's very important to us to have contact information for everybody who's here. There are a couple of other things up at that end of the room that I want to make everybody aware of. In addition to signing in, we'd like to make sure you all have a name tag. You guys probably all know each other. I don't know you, so make sure you got a name tag on. There are 3 we're calling them cards. pardon me guys, that look like this. They're not really cardstock, they're regular paper, but we're calling them cards. And there's a question on each one. If you didn't get this when you signed in, I don't know why that's doing that. If you didn't get these when you signed in, get them, because they're questions that we want you to be able to respond to on your own, without necessarily having to take time in the group to do it. And the 3 cards ask you, what's unique about Walpole? What's special about the town? And what can you tell us about how you think of the town character? So those will be things in your words. When you finish filling those out, or at some point in the evening, there's a table over here to my right, your left, where these topics have big headings, and you can just put the cards on that table where they belong. Okay. In addition, there are some boards up here, we call them boards, near the sign-in table, asking you just some basic questions about yourselves. How long have you lived in town? What's your age group? Don't be embarrassed, I am over 65. It always kind of makes me laugh when I have to put that dot down now, but it's the truth. And then also, there's a map. We actually have this here, so if someone didn't get a chance to use this, let us know. We're just trying to track what parts of town people are coming from. You don't have to tell us on here what your street address is, but if you know your precinct, we'll give you a little dot and you can just put what precinct that you live in. So it's just for us trying to get a sense of the geography of the town and how we're reaching people. So those are just kind of preliminaries. Can't think of anything else. I'm going to explain to you in a little bit what you're going to do when I stop talking and you start talking, but I won't do that yet. I think for now I'll just go through the presentation if I could. So this is for the Walpole Master Plan. Welcome to this evening. It took us a while to get to this point. We're excited, very excited to be here. I want to acknowledge too that Katie on the planning board over there is my hero. She did so much to help us get to this point. Of course you may, absolutely, I'm sorry. Usually we're at tables. In the before time we had tables. Now we're trying to make this setup work as well as possible. We'll return your easel pad when it's time. Katie was instrumental in helping us get to this point, and I just want to acknowledge how much I appreciate all the help that you gave us over the last several months. So I'm going to introduce my team, because we have some of us here this evening. Give you a little bit of an overview about what's a master plan, just so people kind of know what ultimately this content is going to be that we're talking about. You're going to break into discussion groups, which you're already in, and someone's going to facilitate a discussion with you and record what you say. Ultimately, we're going to ask somebody from each group to come up here and just report out what were the most important things that came up in your discussion. That'll be kind of a short, report out for the group. And then I'll go through kind of quickly what the next steps are after this process tonight. And then, of course, the raffle. And so that's the other thing. If you signed in and you didn't get a raffle ticket, make sure you go up and get one, because we will be doing a raffle before the end of this meeting. So who's in charge here? It's really not us. We're the consultants. We're your hired help. We're the people who are coming in with information resources we have and just training and years of experience, some of us anyway are old, in the state and beyond about kind of how the planning process works. So the planning board is ultimately by law the entity that's directed to have a master plan prepared. There's also, as Phil mentioned, a master plan committee with 13 members, several of whom are here this evening. Those are all the names. I will point out to you too that they're all listed on a web page on the town website for the master plan 2022, I think is what you're calling it. So it's pretty easy to find. But they're the ones who are in charge. Those are my special thanks to you, especially just to get ready for tonight. Pat's been instrumental. You're very lucky. I have to tell you, we met a few months ago online with your town department heads. And we were all so very impressed with the people who work for your town. But he's just been an angel all the way through. So thank you very much for all your help. I want to thank Walpole High School for making this facility available and providing that food, which was wonderful. And then the Student Council, we had some representatives here to provide childcare if anybody brought kids this evening, but I guess they didn't. So anyway, we thank them regardless. The team, our team, their planning group is the lead consultant, so-called. We're the ones who are responsible for organizing this process. So I'm Judy Barrett. And with me this evening, I have a couple of my colleagues, and I'm going to point out to them. You can wave. Greg Zapata over there, Fiona Coughlin, and Tyler Marin. They work with me. They'll be kind of going around tonight to be available as resource people if they're needed. And over to my right, I have two representatives from Beta Group, Jeff Netstutis and Emily Slotnick. So Beta is working on the transportation and public facility components of the plan, and assisting also with the climate change and resiliency aspects of the plan, which Fiona will be working on as well. Martha Lyon, who could not be here this evening, is a landscape architect and a historic preservation planner. She's working specifically on the historic preservation component of the plan. And Daphne Politis is actually in charge of kind of community engagement, so she's a very good kind of organizer of events like this. We're kind of doing everything else. As I said, make sure you got food, a raffle ticket, and so forth. I don't need to kind of go through all of that. Just make sure you're all in a group somewhere where there's an easel pad. If you're in a group right now that doesn't have an easel pad in front of you or within reach, you need to join one before we actually start the facilitated discussion. And then there's a set of ground rules, which I think are fairly common sense. There were copies of them up on the sign-in table. I'll go through them anyway. So I know this is probably hard to read from the back of the room, but just so you know, there is a timeline for this project. So briefly where we are is tonight, of course, where this is the first community forum of what will ultimately be 3. The master plan committee's meeting periodically. If you can just sort of see the, their boxes are on there for master plan committee, and they meet almost every month. We actually won't be meeting with them again until the end of December because we have a lot of work to do, but they're meeting throughout and providing direction for the process. And there are certain intervals when we'll be having meetings just like this. There's going to be another one in, when is it? Late March or April. And then there'll be another one later in the early fall when we're ready to kind of present the draft plan. In addition to this in-person forum, we're doing an online version for people who can't join an in-person meeting. The information about using that online tool will be released either later tonight or tomorrow. It's on a platform called Miro. We are available to help anybody who needs help with it, but it's actually pretty self-explanatory. You're going to feel like you're walking in a room and using Post-it notes to put comments up on a board. So that is available. We're going to try that out and see how people like that. And we'll be doing that or some kind of online activity for each of the major meetings in the plan. And our goal, of course, is to get the final draft plan out for a public meeting in September and finish the process by the end of October. That's kind of our overall timeline. And we hope we actually can stick with that. So a little bit of explanation about what this thing is that we call a master plan. I like to think of it as a guide for the physical evolution of a town. How is the town, from a development perspective, going to evolve over time as things grow and change? And while you're thinking about what that physical plan is for the development of your town, and I don't mean everything gets developed, I just mean as the town evolves, you want to think about, okay, so where should businesses be and where can they thrive? Where should housing go? Where do we need to make sure we've preserved our most important open space? How do we think as individual residents and as an institution known as the town of Walpole, how do we exercise stewardship over the environment that we all depend on? How do we think about responding to the challenges of climate change? What constitutes a sustainably developed community? These are all kind of parts of talking about how is the town going to evolve over time. It includes a vision, which is really what we're starting to work on tonight. The vision is like the sort of overarching, what do we want to say about our town 15 or 20 years from now? If you're here, what would you want to be able to say about it if you were imagining that today? And what are kind of the principles that guide the way we all think as Walpole residents? Whether we agree or disagree about some things, there are certain principles that people value. We want to know what those are. who lives in the community today, who's working in the community, and who's likely to be here in the future? And how do we think about today's needs and the needs of future residents? We're trying to plan for preservation and development, but the most important part of any of this is how are we now going to do this? So the implementation program, the action plan for a master plan is critical. We're nowhere near there yet, but that's what's going to come down the road over the next several months. How are you going to get there? And then how do you keep a plan from proverbially sitting on a shelf? You have a plan to evaluate how you're doing over time. You have a process for amending that plan so that you don't have to wait 15 or 20 years to say, oh my gosh, when we worked on that plan in 2021, we didn't know X was coming. Because I guarantee you there will be things that come up that none of us in this room tonight can foresee. A good master plan helps you think through those unexpected events, and also has a process to amend it over time so that you're keeping the plan alive. So that when you get to 15 or 20 years out, you're not starting from scratch. We think a master plan is important because it kind of helps you think about what are the things you really want to accomplish in your town and how do you avoid costly mistakes. You have to work together on this. We can help you identify things, we can help you describe things, we can help you think about ways to do things, but you have to work together to make this plan say what you want it to say. And I know for some communities that can be very challenging because not everybody agrees. But that's why we're all here. Think about what the priorities are. There are some things that are really important to do, but they may not be attainable right now. There may be other things that you could do right now, and things that maybe are going to take some more time. So understanding how you sequence what you're going to do to implement this plan is really important. And then, ultimately, what does every town have at its disposal that it can use to influence how it evolves? Rules and regulations, zoning, subdivision, conservation, the way we regulate development. Money, when we invest in capital improvements, we're really influencing the way things grow and change in our town. And leadership. Those are really three key things that every community can bring to a master plan process. So part of the ideal we're trying to do as we do this process is thinking about who are the next leaders going to be, who are going to step in and help this town evolve in its very best. Ideally, the master plan communicates to developers, this is kind of what we want you to do. So I gotta tell you, most developers want to get to a yes. So if they know what you want, they're more likely to try to respond. Understanding the things that you want to preserve. It's not just all about developing. It's not about putting businesses everywhere, housing everywhere. It's also, what do you want to save? Those are terribly important conversations that we're hoping to hear from you this evening. And then just helping people learn more about their community. I don't know how long all of you have lived here or whatever, but typically we come to a meeting like this and there are things that people just don't know because maybe their experience hasn't led them to know something about their town. You're going to learn, if you listen, you'll learn more about your community in this process than perhaps you knew coming into it. So there are steps in the process. We're at the beginning here in terms of where you folks are. We're working on vision and goals. This is going to go on over the next couple of months. We're gathering data. We've been working on that for a while, just gathering information about the community so we understand demographically and economically and socially where you are and kind of what the environmental issues are in the community, the transportation issues. So we're just gathering information. And some of that is data. Some of it's talking to people. We're kind of doing all those things. Evaluating what's possible in the future and then picking a plan. That's sort of the key, is like really what are the possibilities that you have, do you want to pursue? Having an action plan so you can kind of do those things and then monitoring and update. So these are kind of the basic steps in the development of the plan. And every journey starts with a step, and then we're taking a step tonight. As I said, tonight we're working on the vision and the guiding principles and the goals. We want to know what you kind of see in the future of your community. And these are the kinds of activities we're going to do. We don't have tables right now we can meet at because we're in the COVID time. But when we are able to do some more kind of manipulative things with shapes and so forth, or maps, you'll have an opportunity to do those things. And if COVID persists as it is, we'll make these opportunities available online. But I just want you to know there's a variety of ways to participate in a planning process, and it isn't all necessarily you sitting in a group like this. So, now let me just review the plan for tonight. Facilitators, who are the facilitators here this evening? Maybe you could stand up just so people can see you easily. You see these people? You need to be in a group where they are. Now, we do have a couple of staff here to help with this as well, but I'll tell you what the real constraint is. It's easels and easels and notepads. So we have to kind of be together. And if you need to kind of bunch up a little bit, that's fine, but there has to be a facilitator. And master plan committee members have volunteered to do that. You're going to have probably, about an hour to talk, probably a little less. Facilitator is going to introduce the process. There are several questions the facilitator is going to ask you. You're going to start by introducing yourselves. If you all know each other, that's great. But introduce yourselves. How long have you lived in town? There's going to need to be someone who volunteers to help just take the notes. So that's up to you guys. We're not micromanaging this. We're not telling you who's going to take notes. But the facilitator will ask, who's got good handwriting, or who's willing to do this. Somebody to kind of help keep time. How long have we been on this question? Maybe we should move along. And there are these basic questions, and they're really sort of obvious. And they are like, what's your favorite things about this town? Every plan builds on what's positive, not negative. So we always start by asking, what's great about this place? What are your favorite things about your community? What are your least favorite things? What's missing, do you think? And what are kind of important issues that you can see for the future? Talk about those. And then what's one thing, and you only get one thing you'd like to see that might make this an even better community than it is today. Those are basically the 5 discussion questions. Then intermittently, you'll be asked to kind of register what of the ideas your group comes up with do you think are the most important. So there are these breaks along the way where you're going to take dots, that if you don't have dots, let us know, because how can you come to a public meeting without sticky dots, right? There'll be kind of points when you go up to that board where the notes are, and you're going to put down a dot that says, these are the things I think are the most important. And the facilitators will walk you through all that. Going to report back to the group. We'll do kind of a little bit of next steps. We'll do the raffle. And by all means, I hope that you have fun, because none of this is interesting if people just feel like it's drudgery. So, enjoy your neighbors. I think that's the most important thing I can say to you, is just enjoy being with your neighbors tonight. There are some milestones coming up here. I'll go over this again a little bit later, but just so you know, this is not the end of the process. This is really just the beginning. I might just leave that up, I guess, for now, because that is for my last slide, I think. And if there is another slide after it, I don't remember. So I think with that, I'm going to suggest that we make sure every group, where's the staff? Pat, Fiona, everybody, make sure that every group has an easel pad. We may have to move a couple around to make sure every group has one. Jeff, Emily as well, just make sure every group has an easel pad. If you need any supplies, just raise your hand. One of us will help you. If you need pens, by the way, take your pens with you, because we're not going to try to clean all these pens afterwards. So just take your pens. That's our gift to you for tonight. That and whoever wins the raffle. But get into your groups. Make sure everybody's got an easel pad. Let us know if you need help. Any questions at all before I say go forth? Yes.
Excuse me. Do we have an existing plan already?
Yeah, there's a plan that was done about 20 years ago.
Okay.
I think it's online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm going to put my mask back on and wander around. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, a quick question for you. First of all, thanks for helping us with this. It's exciting. Can you say one click down on the act? How does this get added? Like, these would be considerations with our elected officials that have to say these types of things, our existing zoning. Like, how does that all play into?
It plays out over time. I mean, we're not asking specific questions about zoning tonight. If you have some knowledge, I guess you can bring it up. But I'd like you to kind of think higher order tonight. Just stay with kind of higher order questions, because this process is a little bit like for peeling back layers of an onion. You get into more gritty detail as it goes on. Okay?
Can we just add?
Yes.
Just add one thing? 'Cause
Yes.
I think it hits both of those questions.
Go right ahead.
So the last master plan had things on it like the police station, the fire station, the senior center, the schools. And if you look around at the projects that have been achieved over the past several years, they're all on there. So yes, there was a master plan and it had things like that on it. And if you look to how you achieve it, you know, it goes through the fund, those are all capital projects, building projects, so they go through the funding mechanism, they go through town meeting, they go through the select board, you know, all of that. So there is the town process that it goes through. It's not just that we define the master plan and then all of a sudden it's done. It has to go through the process, but it is heard. And that's why it's important that everyone come out tonight and fill out the online surveys, because if you look at what we've achieved in recent years, I think it's proof that being here matters. So thank you for coming.
Thanks, Kate.